And welcome back to the show where you learn something about yourself and you learn something about us. And if you do it at the same time, then your head might explode. So be careful. Be careful. You should probably not watch and listen at the same time. You should probably watch first and then listen later. But we would make a terrible silent movie. So maybe that's bad advice too.
I'd like to know when we're together, when are we actually silent?
That's true.
Sometimes you are the friendship that we could sit silently and not talk and it'd be completely comfortable. So sometimes we can. I don't know that people would want to watch that though.
Who said that it was silent if we were sitting? We could be working out.
That doesn't happen because one of us is singing song lyrics. If we're working out, it just depends on what the playlist is.
Yeah, one of us is singing song lyrics, and there's a 99% chance we know who the one is.
You? If it's the country playlist, is it you? If there's a freestyle rap, is it you?
Depends on how hard the workout is. Depends on what the intensity is for me.
Yeah.
I listen to a lot of podcasts when I work out, so
you do that when you're alone. Together, we don't listen to podcasts when we work out.
That's true. I also don't work out with other people a lot, so.
Yeah, because I would be mortified if you put on a podcast while we were training together. I would be like, this is the death. Just kill me now. Kill me now.
Might as well just be silent. I don't want to listen to anything.
I'll take my AirPods and I'm going to have Eminem here. You go learn something over there, friend. It'll be great.
Well, we are back. We are fully caffeinated. We are fed. Mm-hmm. And we're ready to rock and roll. But I think we should start, as we always do, with, first of all, our disclaimer that we are awesome, but we're not doctors and we don't play well on the internet. So anything we say or do, and I'm not going to go into, the 5,000 words spiel that Stacy does. You should talk to your doctor first. Okay. Let's just say that. What has your, let me be specific here.
I love when you're direct with me. Do it.
What did your weekend look like this past weekend? And what was the favorite thing that you did?
My weekend looked like this weekend. There was a lot of packing and a lot of getting rid of stuff. My weekend involved navigating the humanity of Facebook Marketplace.
Ooh.
And getting to practice patience and communication and more patience in getting rid of stuff. And also, my husband was gone this weekend at like this cool men's event Launchpad in Frisco. So he was doing all this self-work for himself while I was here preparing us for this move. So I packed. I spent some time, took my kids out for breakfast, engaged with humanity that we like to call Facebook Marketplace, which I sometimes forget humanity exists outside of my scope of practice. And then had some friends over who were just starting to say bye. So.
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part was I took all my kids out to breakfast at this local diner, and the conversations we had, getting Joshua's doing great. Jonathan hitting the reality like, oh, I need to move out in 3 weeks. I didn't know. Where have you been? And then Kylie came with us, Jonathan's girlfriend, and they sit at a table in this small town, in this diner that we love, talking with my adult kids. Well, Benjamin was there too, and he was hanging. And it was my favorite thing. And it was one of those moments that you just like, it's all good. Like this transition, it's time and they're going to be okay. That was my favorite thing.
Well, I know you might not give Benjamin, the adult certificate. He doesn't have the adult stamp of approval just yet.
Yeah.
But, my thought is that when y'all get down here, over here, whatever direction that is, that, he could take over the weed eating responsibilities at my house.
Yes.
Or if you're from California, weed whacking, which is what Stacy calls it. that he can we can give him. I'll even pay him. I'll even pay him to come and learn the skills and the pains of lawn care.
Are you going to teach him to drive the ride-on mower?
Here's my hesitation with that. Ours operates a little bit differently than your standard ride mower because it is older. And so it's not just like gas and brake. That's what a lot of them kind of are now, So I'm not opposed to that, but I also would like to keep my fence intact as well. And so there's some things when you give a 15-year-old boy a spinning blade and speed, there's a lot that can happen. So he might can graduate that. I'm okay with the weed eater because he can just let go of the button and it stops, right? And it's electric, so it's not like he has to pull start it.
I also don't want to miss out on another favorite thing that happened this weekend.
Okay.
Is that, and I didn't get to tell you, I did tell Paige, but the welcome to Texas gift that you guys got me all in my feels. That got me all in my feels. I was like, okay, we're doing this. Like, all right, I'm gonna go now.
I just want everybody to realize that it wasn't the packing the boxes and the emptying house that set the reality in for. It was a gift that Paige and I decided to give her.
Well, before we get into how much fun you had this weekend, it was that there's some ways that Paige and I are so similar, and keeping surprises, neither one of us are good at. So how much time passed between when you bought the cookie cutter and she was like, "Can I show Stacy right now?"
We literally paid for the cookie cutter a solid 30 seconds before you were getting FaceTimed.
And I love the delusion that Paige and I have that we are going to keep surprises. And like, we just don't. We just can't. We just can't. Not even if we wanted to. So that is what my weekend was. It looked much different than your weekend. Your weekend was amazingly fun. And you actually haven't gotten to tell me about it. So I want to know, what was the funnest, not the most fun, that you want to share about your weekend?
Well, there was a lot to love about my weekend. First of all, we're recording this on a Monday. This past Friday was my 30th birthday. So Paige and I went down to Fort Worth and stayed the night, a couple of nights there in Fort Worth, and went down to the Stockyards, which for those listening, you can just Google Stockyards Fort Worth and you'll find all you want to know about it. But essentially the Stockyards is a historically and currently too still is a place where like cattle are sold, cattle are driven through. It's kind of like this marketplace, or at least that was the original intentions for cattle, for livestock. But it's now become like they still have cattle around, but it's more of a place to like go to concerts, go to rodeos, go eat, drink, shop, stuff like that. There's some hotels down there. So it's a good time. But essentially, I think of like walking into a Western, a modern Western. That's kind of the feel down there. And so everybody's wearing cowboy hats and cowboy boots, all that kind of stuff. And we were no different, right? So, I bought a cowboy hat, first actual cowboy hat I've ever had. I've had boots for a long time, but I bought my first pair of exotic boots for my birthday, which means that they're made from something that's not leather, right? Like mine's made from alligator belly and ostrich. And so we got dressed up. Paige had real sparkly boots on. Yeah, these were her. Think like Taylor Swift concert-esque sparkle tall boots, but now we're wearing it with denim Actually, you could have wore that same outfit to a Taylor Swift concert. Now that I'm thinking about it,
she could have.
She didn't have a cowboy hat on, but she had, she had the denim. One of our clients called it a onesie. It was more like a romper, not a onesie.
Did you get that DM? Did somebody send you a DM that she was wearing a onesie?
Yes.
Do I even want to guess the client?
Josie. And so, but she was saying like, oh, that's a super cute onesie. So I told her to Paige, she was like, LOL onesie. So anyway, my favorite part of the weekend, to be quite honest with you, was going to Billy Bob's, which is the name of the concert venue down there, which I know sounds like the most cowboy Texas thing you can think of is the name. It's actually the world's largest honky tonk. And I can't even really describe what it looks like. Like on the inside, there's no way you can guess what it looks like on the inside from looking at the outside. It's really, really big, and really hard to describe. And it is 2 concert stages. It is 10 bars. It's at least 10 pool tables. Several arcade games in there, and a rodeo arena, a small rodeo arena. So you can pay like, and a gift shop place. So we paid like $6 a piece to go watch some bull riding, which is kind of like a thing they do on the side there. But it's still within the building. You just walk into this there's this little dirt arena, and you sit up on these, bleachers, these stands, and they bring them out. I mean, it's like going to a basketball game almost. Like they bring them out with music and introduce you to each bull rider. And then once they've introduced all of them, then they all go back, behind the chutes and stuff. And they start to bring out, obviously one bull at a time, get him back there. And then they introduced the rodeo clowns too. They call them bovine handlers.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
But they're rodeo clowns. I mean, they don't dress up necessarily like a clown, but that's what people would know them as. And they're the people who corral the bull after he's thrown the rider off. And they're the ones with the real balls. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Bull riders are some tough folks, but the ones who have to corral the bull after he's been thrown off, like, think about standing 10 foot from a 2,000-pound animal who's pissed off, right? Not an easy thing to do. So that was my favorite part, going to Billy Bob's. I would go back. I would go back right now. I'd go back instantly. Like, never. Instantly, my favorite thing ever.
Okay, I love this. First of all, we know Paige doesn't really listen to the podcast. I don't think she does, unless you're listening to together in the car. So I want to take kind of like this internet vote of how long, once I get there, do you think it'll take Paige to wear a cowboy hat? Because right now she's like, oh hell no, Stacey, I am not wearing a cowboy hat. So just like for a fun internet vote, like there's no real wager on the line, but if you and I were gonna make like, she's never gonna know. How long do you think it'll take to get Paige to wear a cowboy hat? How long do you think it'll take me?
Take you?
Yeah, to get her to say yes to a cowboy hat.
2 weeks.
You have so much faith in me.
I do. I have a lot of faith in you. Also, too, she was a lot warmed up to the idea this weekend once I did it, because she couldn't. When I told her that's what I wanted for my birthday was to get a cowboy hat since we were going to Fort Worth, she was like, "I just don't see you in a cowboy hat." I said, "Okay, that's fine. Like that's okay if you don't see that, but give it a chance." And now that she's seen it, it's a new thing, right?
Oh, it's a new thing. She definitely had some strong opinions.
So that was the funnest thing that I did this weekend. And it was, I'm like, man, why have I not been down here before? How have I lived here since 2019 and I've never been to Fort Worth? Like, Fort Worth has so much more to offer than just the stockyards, although the stockyards, currently are my favorite thing. Also, I like Western history too. So it's there's a couple museums to go to down there and a lot of nightlife, or like restaurants and things of that nature. But yeah, anybody can be a cowboy in Fort Worth.
So I know we talked a little bit earlier that there was like the way that Instagram is now curating my life, that it's now all full of jujitsu. It's full of how the ads are like cross country move, and now it's Texas decor. So one of the things that, other than, Yeehaw, which will probably be in some bathroom, they had. Have you ever seen like the small penny tiles, like the hexagon things that are like white and black in like kind of older houses? But this brand, basically it looks like a print made of these hexagon tiles that are white and black. Okay. And one says cowboy up and one says cowgirl up. And I saw it and I'm like, oh my God, how amazing would this be in our office? So like when we're in the same place recording a podcast, like behind me says cowgirl up and behind you, we could just wear hats. We could do so many things. I didn't buy them yet. But we don't know how Texas's California girl is going to get. I mean, it could go pretty far. It could go pretty far.
You're right.
What happens to the great state of Texas when Stacey Hansen arrives? We don't know.
We'll see.
It's yet to be seen.
Hopefully the temperature changes.
I'm confident it will.
the literal temperature, not the environmental temperature, not the cultural temperature, but the literal temperature of the air.
Okay. Speaking of culture and temperature, what are we talking about today?
So there's a concept that you introduced to me. It was actually, you said it to a client. Probably didn't even realize, maybe you did, that you said it. And I wrote it down. And as I do, I flipped it around in my brain and thought about it and mulled it over. And I think it's pretty cool. So much so that I brought it into the most recent lecture we did with the cohort. And I think it's worth, many episodes, but we'll start with this one. So what you said was feelings are indicators, not dictators. Mm-hmm. And when you think about the brevity of that, but also the impact of that statement, to me, what it means is feelings are giving you information. They're a message. They're a form of feedback. But they don't necessarily make the next move. They don't tell you what to do. They tell you how you are responding to said thought, situation, whatever, but they're not a plan of action. Like, that makes me mad, so I'm going to go act mad, right? It's not that. That's what we're trying to go here, because that's the norm. That is the typical response is, I feel this way, so I'm going to go act on this feeling, because if not, I'm not authentic. Well, actually, if you think about it, something within you got stirred up and it caused an emotion, right? An emotion was the response that you had to that thought or that action or whatever it is. And so you changing your behavior based on that thing actually is more inauthentic than not sharing that emotion at all, because it might not be who you truly want to portray yourself at. It may just be a short-term thing. It's right. It's like, I say something that pisses Stacey off and she reacts with anger. That doesn't mean she's an angry person. It was just a short-term emotion that she allowed to present in the real world. So feelings are indicators, not dictators, just means, hey, it's like a check engine light, right? And that's what that's our goal, is to get you to see it as neutral as you would see an indicator on your car. I go, oh, my tire pressure is low. What should I do about that? All right. Oh, that thing made me angry. What should I do about that? All right. It doesn't direct your action. Like, just because you get a low tire indicator doesn't mean that, oh my gosh, I had to stop the car right now because my tire's low, right? It's okay. All right. Tire's low. Let me go figure out how to get some air in it. All right. We'll make a direction, or we'll make a decision based off all the information, not just one initial indicator. How'd you come up with that?
I actually think I heard that. I think I heard somebody else say it. I don't remember when, because I've just been doing this for so long. But I don't think it was an original thought. I remember hearing a speaker say it. I'm pretty confident. And then I just took it and made it mine. And when you say check engine light, it's It's actually really accurate. And I know for people who are listening to you and I, and who have watched me for a long time, I would tell a story I haven't told before, is that one of my biggest fears was that I would get stuck, like that my car would break down with all my kids in the car. With all my kids in the car. And for me, much like maybe some people, when I see a check engine light, this is previous version of Stacy, I was like, my car is going to blow up right now. This is a crisis. This needs to get fixed. And when we moved from California to Colorado, I had 3 little kids. Jonathan wasn't even 1 yet. I moved by myself. Ted, I think he couldn't come till later. 3 little kids, drove from California to Colorado with my check engine light. The whole time, worried that we were going to end up in the desert, me with 3. Okay, that actually never happened. But it took so much energy worrying about that. Now, the funny part of this story is that it would be 8 years later when we were in Colorado and we were looking to move to Denver. And I had 5 kids in the car, that my check engine light came on and I wasn't even moved. You know why? Because I had done all the work. Things didn't bother me as much. And my engine literally blew up on the freeway with 5 kids in the car. And do you know what happened? Somebody came and picked us up. And a check engine light for me, every time I would see it then in a car, previously created so much anxiety in me that it became like, hey, once I got over it and feelings were indicators, not dictators, it was like, I'm not moved by a check engine light anymore. And so it was the indicator. It's not a crisis. It's just a light. And I let previously all of those emotions dictate my behavior, which caused so much more stress than it needed to be, that when I learned the lesson, I was like, no, it doesn't get to be a dictator. It doesn't get to dictate my actions. And then as I got to do this work more and more, not only do I see it in myself, because all this work that we coach is the things we do personally as well. We've just been doing it for a longer time and still do it. I mean, both have emotions that we're like, you don't get to be the boss of me. To have the discipline to detach from them and not disengage and go like, hey, I'm going to do the right thing to the best of my ability, irregardless of how I feel about it. I think that is the rarity and the thing that is the biggest struggle when a feeling comes, that I don't have to act on this feeling. So I pretty confident I stole it from somebody else. I'd be willing to bet I stole it from somebody else.
I think what that brings out for me is emotions have labels that come with stories, right? So in order to understand things, we give them labels. I mean, that's a natural human proclivity. It's just like diagnosing something at the doctor's office. It's hard to treat something that you don't have a name for, right? So, it depends on how that emotion has showed up for you previously in your life, right? Like what you've been conditioned to, how you've been conditioned to respond to that emotion. But like you said, it's, when you saw the check engine light and instantly a story of fear came over you of, this is the worst thing that could happen. I'm going to be the one who's broke down with my kids in the car, and however much you wanted to elaborate on that story in your head. And whether that came from an experience you had as a child being in a broke down car, or it was unfounded at any point in time because you were just a new mom and you just thinking about worst case scenarios, right? But regardless of what happened, the action was exactly the same. It was a check engine. It was the stimulus was the exact same thing. Your thought following the stimulus was different. And so it brought up a different emotion. So that brings to what one of the concepts that we teach in the cohort is thoughts lead to emotions, lead to actions, lead to reality. Right. So this is like what you actually see and feel and how you live your life is a trickle down effect of the thoughts that you have. And so the thoughts that you have are not who you are. They're just something that you have, right? It'd just be like me, me giving you a dollar bill, right? Money is something that you have, but it doesn't mean that your whole life operates around money, right? Thoughts are something that you have, and you can allow them the control over your emotional responses. You can allow the emotional responses of those thoughts to become part of your normal daily actions, or you can manage those emotional responses with a little bit of awareness, right? So we can't control the thoughts that we have, and we cannot control the emotions that come after those thoughts. Okay, so this is not about control. This is about management, right? This is about altering the way that we think about things, the way that we see things, just like you alter the way that you saw a check engine light, so that the thought that's associated with that thing, that label that you put on it, is different, and the emotion to that label will therefore be different. So once you thought of it in a different way, you were like, oh, well, this emotion is at the very least a little bit of discomfort, right? Like I got to sit and listen to 5 whining kids in the car until somebody comes and picks us up. It's not the end of the world. It's not, it's not death. It's not anything that's closely associated with deep sadness or despair. It's an inconvenience at best.
Well, we get to choose. Like we talk about monitoring thoughts, and I got to practice this a lot this weekend with so much change in our family that if we're going to go with the check engine light, description, well, it could be an O2 sensor. You could drive cross country and back with needing a new O2 sensor. That's not going to leave you on the side of the road. The car just is like, hey, something's not functioning properly, or your engine could blow. And there's a big chasm between you need an O2 sensor and your engine can blow. I do know that if the check engine light blinks, that's really bad. If it's
it's trying to get your attention.
If your check engine light is blinking, that's really bad. But we think about it in regards to health metrics as well, right? If you just got like, oh, you got your blood work back, you probably should change the way you eat. And we're like, okay, all right. That might just be like an O2 sensor of health. But you get a diagnosis of like, hey, you've got some occlusions. You're at risk for a heart attack. Well, that's a blinking light. And depending on where you land, if we looked at like just the regular check engine light of like, okay, I'm going to monitor this and support it, you likely would never get to a blinking check engine light. But coming back to monitored thoughts, especially this weekend, there are so many thoughts flooding my mind that I'm like, if I pull on this thread, is it helpful? No, I'm really not going to. I hear you. I'm not going to entertain this. I'm going to move you to the side, because if I entertain this thought more, the emotions just become not out of control, but so disproportionate to the thought, to the story I created them with. So I'm like, okay, thought, I see you. You're going to move to the left. You thought, I'm going to entertain a little bit. And it's that discipline of still being able to be like, I can have a thought and monitor it and allow emotions to come, because some of them just need to come out without having a judgment about them. I think there's this chasm between complete stoicism and not being moved, and being completely over emotional because a butterfly landed on my shoulder, or whatever that means. And there's this baseline of emotions are amazing, whether they're full of endorphins and dopamines and the best like love. We're not making decisions out of that place. No good decision is made at highs or at lows. Emotionally speaking, because either way, logic is not on the table. Like, hey, let's go to Vegas and get married this weekend. Okay, well, if that's made it, talk to me in 2 weeks. That it's that finding that medium of monitoring thoughts and managing the emotions, I think, is the greatest challenge. We practice it, but from what we get to experience is what people struggle the most with.
Yeah. Well, that's the key point there is practice, right? Everything centers around reps. There is no, I come to this conclusion more and more every day. The only way to get better at things is to do it more. Do it more, do it longer, do it better. Whatever it is, you don't have enough. If you're not confident in it, you don't have enough reps. That's literally the answer. More reps. And here's the thing. There are going to be a lot of shitty reps. You have to take a lot of shitty reps. People do this. I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take is the common phrasing around that sentiment, right? Is, do you know how many shots, Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant took to get the large percentage that they made in key moments? It was a lot. They put in, someone argued the most reps when other people weren't willing to. And so it's about reps at monitoring your thoughts so that you don't allow that emotion. You can maintain discipline around your emotional response, because emotions carry a lot of energy. So you want to use that energy for good outcomes, for positive, forward moving outcomes, not things that move you backwards, right? Not things that hurt relationships, things that hurt your mental image of yourself, right? Things that hurt you physically, right? Because that can happen from emotional responses as well. So the gap between the thought and emotion kind of combination that comes, because those come in quick succession, and the response to that, the action based off of that, which the action may be doing nothing. Like the choice may be to take no action, maybe to actually not do anything in some scenarios. That's the thing that, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
That's the thing that we're trying to train. We're trying to train that little bit of space, that creating that space. So that's where a lot of these mindfulness practices that center around either yoga-based things or journaling-based things or breathwork-based things or whatever it is, those are the key point behind all those things is, hey, we don't want what's going on in your head as a survival mechanism, right? Because we're all humans and we're trying to respond to threat, essentially, is kind of what our threat detection system is, a large part of our brain. We don't want that to mess you up. So take a little bit of time between that thing that happens and your response to that thing that happens and go, is this really the way I feel? Or is this something that I've just been conditioned to feel, right? Or something that I've been conditioned to respond to in this way. And that's not really who I am. Now, I can't change the way that I respond to it right now in this moment, but I can start to take reps in the other direction. Like I can start to take reps in patience, start to take reps in taking a breath, right? I can start to take reps in anything that disrupts that initial pattern, to go from check Angelina zone, now I freak out, right? It's check Angelina zone, now I freak out. Hold on. Does this mean what I think it means? It's that we're trying to train. Anything that happens after that is going to be up to you, because I'm not going to take the same action that you're going to take. But it's that little pause, check on this, right? Monitor this, audit this real quick, and then let's move forward.
That pause is critical. What I wanted to ask, and because everybody wants to know, how many reps, how many shitty reps did it take? And so here's what I want to bring to the table, because people are watching us. We are influencing them by the mere fact that they're listening or watching.
Mm-hmm.
How many shitty reps did it take for you to be where you are right now? How long did it take in this practice for you to sit right here, right now, and be able to be like, okay, this is what I've done. From this point, I can tell you it took me this long.
Thousands.
Yeah. So do you ever get it wrong still?
Every day.
Yeah. Same, where I act out of character. That I said something that I was like, Ooh, yeah. That pause would have been really helpful.
Yeah.
Right there. Is that, oh, let that emotion get a little too far down the line. Let me go ahead.
Reel it back.
And reel that back. And I'll say, I wanted both of us to share that because it's easy to think that we teach this work and that it's easy for us. I won't say it's easier now. We just have confidence in the outcomes because we've done it so long. But definitely not perfect at it. Not perfect with each other in it. Not perfect in our with our spouses, like there's still room to grow, but we've made enough messes and know the outcome of not doing it this way that even imperfectly doing it this way is better than anything we could have done previously.
So if I had to make it more simple for myself, it's just redirecting the story that you associate with the feeling that you're having. Right? It's a rewrite. Right? You're the only one who's thinking it. So you can rewrite it. You have the power to rewrite it. So for example, if I feel like I know how to coach someone based off of what their blood work says, and I make a mistake in that, the next thought could easily be, I don't know. I suck at this. Why am I doing this? Instead, I choose to use that energy to go, I don't know. I just don't have enough reps yet. I don't know. I'm going to go work a little bit harder. I don't know. I'm going to choose to spend more time in this area because I don't know. It's not I don't know and I judge the fact that of where I'm at. I don't know and I go, that is an indicator. Not knowing something is an indicator, or not getting the result you want as an indicator to go, ding, 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 you need more work in this area. Okay, cool. I need more work in that area. Now it's up to me to determine how that gets done. If right now is the right time to go in on that thing, right? How important is it in the grand scheme of things to continue to do reps in this, right? So let's say I plant a flower and the flower dies. Well, that's an indicator that I'm not a very good gardener, but I don't really care that much about gardening. So how many more reps am I going to put there, right? Whereas if I see an indicator that I'm not communicating well with my wife, I'm going to put a lot more reps into that because I care about that. That holds a lot of weight in my life. That's a big lever that I get to pull. That's a lot of advantage in my life if that goes well, right? So I have to pay attention to that more so, just like I have to pay attention to the business, just like I have to pay attention to coaching methods, right? Paying attention to my own health, right? So it's just like when people see an amazing body, is the crappy part is a lot of times people don't know if that's more genetic or more work, but at the very least you can tell if someone is, as they climb in age and they continue to prioritize their health, you know that they've gotten a lot of reps in that. They put a lot of reps in, and because the reps get harder over time, because the returns get smaller at the beginning, the returns are small. Then you see this, you get the bell curve, and on the backside of that bell curve, the returns get smaller for increased effort, right? So you do get this increased or decreased returns after a while. But what I'm getting at is how I talk to myself based on an indicator in my life, based on some type of emotion that I'm seeing, is if I'm so busy worrying about the outcome of the thing, I'm not going to be able to take that emotional energy and redirect it into effort to getting better. Right? So if you're so busy worried about the check engine light and freaking out that this is the worst case scenario, you are not going to redirect that energy into calling for help, to be like, hey, I need somebody to come get me. Right? I'm broke down. I need somebody to come get me. And it's using that example, it's a very simple solution. And when you think about how to use that emotional energy for your benefit instead of your detriment, it really starts at that pivotal moment where that emotion starts to write your story for you. That's where you need to be the one. And again, it takes practice, right? That's where you need to put a lot of your focus and attention onto am I letting this emotion like, am I letting it tell me an old story that's not helpful? Because if I am, it's up to me to rewrite that story. No, this is not what that means. What this actually means is ... right? What this actually means is I'm just not practiced enough at responding to these type of situations, right? If you get hot because of something that your spouse says to you, yes, that is a little bit inflammatory for me, but why is that inflammatory? Like, let's peel that back. Like, what's the inflammatory piece of that? Oh, that's because previously I heard someone else respond negatively like this, or previously this feels like something else that's happened to me before. That's where this is coming from. So when you start to have that understanding, then you can redirect that story and go, oh yeah, that's an old story. Like I still feel it. I still feel kind of pissed off, but I'm not going to allow it to be like the next thing that comes out of my mouth. I'm going to go, oh yeah, that's right. That's something that I'm working on getting rid of. It's still there, but it doesn't have as much. That's not the story I'm reading. It's still there, but it's not the story I'm reading. I'm working on writing a different one. Is that clear?
Yeah, I love that though too, and I'm so glad you brought that up, because from my experience, people think because they feel something, it's true and relevant right now. Feelings can just show up. They don't need to have a reason, and they also don't need to be true. And just because you have a feeling doesn't make it true. It is a real feeling. You are having a real response, but that doesn't make it true. And so you almost have to test it out going, is this true? Old story. Gotcha. Okay. Good thing I didn't react. Good thing I was able to respond and not react to that. And I know for me, I can usually, well, you can see it on my face when I'm about to react and not respond. You also can tell my responses because I'll usually take a breath before I respond to something, but it doesn't make it not itchy, like it's not a little bit scratchy.
Right.
And it goes, okay, there might be something there I still need to work through. There might be some conversation I need to have with myself, or just let it go. It doesn't need to necessarily be resolved. Not everything that you feel needs to be talked about.
I would argue most things don't. Most things don't. And we talk about so much, especially the people who probably listen to our podcast. We want to still live. We all desire to be free individuals in a free country. Well, this is really where that starts, because if you're going to let things that come across a device that you hold in your hand or that you hang on the wall affect the emotions that come out of you, that is the least amount of freedom that you can have, right? So just because you make enough money, or just because you have your own shit, or whatever it is, if you're still allowing somebody purposefully curated something on a media, like on a piece of media, to get an emotional response out of you, just like you just said, that's not a true emotion. That was a curated emotion. They hit a button because they knew that would be a button for a lot of people, right? They're trying to get you to respond. That's the point. It's click. It's like. It's keep watching, right? It's all of that. It's buy, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's all for malintent. Some of it can be beneficial. But what I'm saying is most of the time, they're feeding into an emotion that you enjoy having, even though it's to your detriment, right? You love feeding your anger because when you feel anger, you feel righteous. And when you feel righteous, it's like it's a rush for you, right? Like, look at me. I'm the big man on campus, right? Big woman on campus, whatever, right? And so the biggest thing here is, what are you feeding? Are you feeding the side of you that has a level head, that lets things go? Or are you feeding the side of you that, because we all have proclivities in both directions, right? If somebody says they don't feel anything, they're lying because they're human beings, right? Or are you feeding the side of you that wants to get a little pissed off, or a lot pissed off, right? Or wants to be really sad about something, or wants to be overly happy about something, right? Or something to that degree. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't have emotion, just like Sadie said. We're not saying be emotionless. We're not saying be stoic. We're saying audit how that process is going in your mind. Watch it from a bird's eye view as best you can. This is why mindfulness is important, because it disconnects you. You can't look down the barrel and look at the gun at the same time, right? You cannot see what you're looking at right up in front of you and see the entire scope of the landscape at the same time. It's impossible. So every once in a while, you have to raise your head up. You have to look around and go, what's actually going on here? And when you do that, you make better choices. That's really the thing here. We're trying to get people to be less emotionally reactive, more level-headed, more open to possibilities, and just going, why in the heck would I be mad at that, right? If I saw somebody else do that, I would be like, that's a little crazy, because that's not even a big deal. But if you do, coming from, it's different when it happens to us, right? No, it's not. We're all human beings, right? We're all human beings, guys. We all want very similar things, okay? And so from that degree, what I'm really getting at is allowing yourself to be controlled by emotional responses is really a weak way to live. It's really going to...
Say it again.
Allowing your life to be controlled by emotional responses is a weak way to live. Even if you're the strongest person on the planet, it's a weak way to live. If you want to be strong, true strength lies in control. The ability to look at something and go, that is not the way that I'm choosing to respond differently. It's a choice. It's a decision. And then you start to understand what discipline over emotional responses means at that point. Discipline doesn't mean getting onto yourself. Discipline means, yep, that's something that I usually would do. I usually would get mad at that situation, right? Somebody cuts me off in traffic. I usually would get pissed about that, even though I can do absolutely nothing about it. And anything I do from this point forward is just making an ass out of myself. But I'm going to choose to go, you know what? They probably need to be somewhere faster than I do. I'll hang back here, right?
I was thinking as you were talking, bringing this back to, if you're focused on the outcome, you can't focus on the effort. And the whole, not that I'm getting some pushback right now, but definitely as people watching us make this move, there's a lot of curiosity and a lot of questions for things that I don't have answers for. I'm not clear on, let me rephrase this. I'm clear on an anticipated move date with no tangible facts in my hand to lead out to that proclivity, right? So like, we don't have a job offer in hand at this current moment. There could be one by the end of the day. There could be one first thing in the morning. My energy is not focused on the outcome, or my emotions aren't tied to that outcome. My energy right now is focused on the effort. So when that outcome shows up, that's beyond our control, like husband is applying for jobs, making the connections, doing all the network, that we are ready to go at a moment's notice. Now, my emotions are, I'm okay with this. Why? Oh, kind of coming back to the beginning. I've put in the reps. I've done this before. I've watched this play out before. So I'm not emotionally attached to, if it's not July 4th, okay. If it's the 12th, okay, great. But I'm preparing, I'm putting in the effort. So as if it is on that date, without being fully attached to that outcome, I'm ready. And so from a health coaching perspective, I love when you say it is like, get people engaged. How do you say it? That they stay long enough to see the miracle. Mm-hmm. Say it better.
Believe long enough to see the miracle happen.
Yes. They don't stay long enough.
Mm-hmm.
They don't stay long enough to watch the systems of your body repair. You don't stay long enough to see the physique results you want. You don't stay long enough to watch a whole lifetime of behaviors pivot. Like if it took you 40 years of life to get to us, and you're like, I'd like to see this radical behavior transformation in physique in 6 months. Okay. Well, I hope you have a whole lot of will. But it typically takes, even if you have the will, you have body systems that don't respond to that will, that you have to support to get them to fall in line. And where I want to bring this to is where we talked about a little bit earlier previously of being dulled by convenience and everybody wanting something to be quick. If this work of being disciplined enough to have a feeling and it's an indicator and not a dictator isn't convenient when somebody pisses you off and you want to say something back, right? Or when you're hurt and you take it instead of hurting someone else back with your words. Usually it's with words. I mean, I don't think anybody is like yielding swords and, stabbing people, or it's not the Roman Empire of, the Colosseum, but of being able to receive something and go, it is inconvenience for me to wrestle with this and not act on it, because it would be super convenient for me just to hand this right back to you. Like if you got spicy with me and I would be like, I want to be spicy back. I can't think that that's ever happened. But so pull that thread a little bit, because it's something you and I talk about privately and publicly, that this being dulled by convenience is really the obstacle that's in front of people looking to make change anywhere in their life. Like, where do we look for the thing that's convenient instead of choosing friction? Because it is friction to not let your emotions run you. It's a deliberate choice that rubs.
I think it's when you talk about convenience and the fact that our world just gets more and more convenient every day, right? We find out more efficient ways to do things, communicate, labor, logistic, that type of thing. We find more and more convenient ways to do that. And originally the reason we look at history so nostalgically and like those characteristics are something we want to bring back and those people were so strong is because their environment did not dictate any of convenience. They had to sit with things for a long time, right? When you send letters and you can't call somebody on the phone, much less FaceTime them, much less text them, you sit with things for a long time before you say what you need to say, right? And so that ability to sit with something is very inconvenient. But it was just a normal part of life. There was nothing else to do back then. And today, because of the fact that we have so much convenience, our ability to control our responses, which is a constant practice. You're never good enough at it. It's a constant practice because it depends on, are you sitting on the couch fat and happy, or are you super tired after a long day at work, right? That's going to dictate how much time you give before you respond. So our practice at emotional responses are just responding to things in general, internally and externally. That acts is something that you have to keep sharp all the time. That is a constant skill that you must upkeep. It's a maintenance thing. And when I say dulled by convenience, that's what I mean, is that skill has been dulled, the ability to respond appropriately in your favor, let's say, because you might think getting mad is in your favor. It's actually in your detriment, especially if you care about that person. We usually respond the most viciously to the people that we care about. And your ability to control that response is dulled by the fact that you can just go do anything else but that. You can go get on your phone. You can go watch whatever you want to watch. You can go play whatever you want to play. You can go buy whatever you want to buy. You can go wherever you want to go. And so that ability to have to sit with things and learn control is just not popular. And so if you want more control, you have to practice more control. It's just like anything else. There's no getting around the fact that we only learn and adapt so quick. Just like you said, you can will all you want. You can sit there and think about how much you want to lose weight all day long, but your body is only going to go at the speed that nature allows. And so is your brain. So you may listen to this podcast and be real fired up and be like, man, this is really something that I need in my life. And if that's true, I advise you to find something right now that you can go and work on. And it might not be the biggest problem that you have. Like, my biggest problem is responding emotionally when my partner brings up finances. I don't know. Maybe that's your problem, right? You might not have the bandwidth to go and practice that right now. But you can go, you know what? When my dog trips me up in the kitchen, I'm not going to talk shit about him or kick him. Am I lying?
No, I'm so laughing because while we're recording this podcast, the puppy has chewed my shoe, eaten a calendar, and made me bleed. I'm like, I chose this, right? I chose this.
Yeah.
And so, no, you're right. You're right. And when she is right between my feet, because she just wants to be so attached to me, which is not shocking. It has to be wherever I am. I'm like, okay, this is an opportunity. So I have a question for you. Where are you intentionally creating friction in your life to sharpen your axe? Where are you making things less convenient for you so that you can stay sharp?
Waking up earlier. That's the one thing. My life, I would argue that everybody who's listening to this life instantly gets better when you wake up earlier. Mm-hmm. It instantly does, because there's nobody to bother you, right? You are the one who controls your time in that domain of the world, right? Generally. And I know this is not, I mean, it's possible for everybody, but you're going to have to figure out how it works for you. But that's the way that it's very convenient and comfortable to lay underneath warm sheets. It always is, and it always will be. And that's just the way things are, because we're humans and we like comfort, we like conserving calories, right? And so my friction is getting up in the morning, right? When I get up in the morning and I do a few things, like literally a couple. It's not like I'm out there doing 566 things. I don't get up, go work out, go cold plunge, do my breath work, stand on one leg while I make coffee. That's not what I do, right? If I just get up 30 minutes earlier, right, and I read my Bible and I go through one education module to learn something more about our coaching practice, maybe 45 minutes worth of time, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how long the learning is, right? Just those little things instantly makes me better for everything else, because I've already scratched an itch that I want. Like, I already feel like I've gotten better. And so the rest of the day, it doesn't mean that it just flows. It still takes work. It still takes navigation, but it makes it a lot easier to navigate, knowing that I don't have, that I have I've already put a little money in the bank. So everything else is just dividends on top of that investment. So for me, that's where that inconvenience of getting up earlier has always made me better, will always make me better. Do I do it all the time? No. This morning, prime example. I did the alarm. I changed the alarm like 3 different times, didn't get up. And then lo and behold, the time that I was about to get up, here comes my son in the room and, coming to lay between me and Paige. And so, at that point, I'm just like, you know what, man, we'll get another rep tomorrow. You're going to sit here and lay with your son, because you might not get to do that. You don't get to do that for very many other times, right? So, yeah, that's my answer there.
I love that answer, because it's not complicated.
Right.
It's not complicated. Everybody wants to make everything more complicated when they want to make a change. And okay, maybe you're not. If you're listening, you're like, okay, well, how do I increase friction? 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I have a client. She's a mom, 3 kids, and a teacher. So she's always with her kids. So when she says, I don't have time to myself, she legitimately doesn't. So she gets up in the morning. Her kids go to school with her. She teaches other people's children all day. Her children are in her car with her after she's taught all of her other people's children, and come home with her. And we're trying to cultivate this time that she just has for herself. And she might say, like, Stacey, I have so much friction. Why do you want to increase friction? I'm like, well, this is a different stimulus. This is for making you a priority. And we literally started with, I'm like, could you just go stand outside by yourself in the morning for 5 minutes? Could you get up 5 minutes earlier? And those 5 minutes changed her whole day. Now, the funny thing is when we increased it to 10 was too much. 10 was too much. I'm like, okay, let's back it down to 7. These are small incremental things that increased. When you increase friction in your life in one area to have more control, other things, these are my air quotes for magically, for people who are listening and not watching, magically get better. Because when you introduce self-discipline to making yourself better, you respond to circumstances differently. That 5 minutes, that your 30 minutes in the morning makes you a better person to navigate, to deal with, to like, I know when you're fed and trained that we function better during the day. That might be inconvenient to navigate our day around you training or eating, but I will take that friction of reorganizing our day if we need to have the best version of you at any given time, because I know the benefit, even if it's inconvenient.
Yeah. The reason people don't do it is because it takes faith and because it takes patience.
That's true. Say
standing
more.
Standing outside for 5 minutes, living a life that your client lives based off how you just described it. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are going to go, Stacy, you're nuts. 5 minutes ain't going to do shit for me. Right? And they want the whole thing. They want an hour's worth of morning routine bullshit. I don't know what our fascination is with morning routines in our culture, but anyway, 5 minutes, it's not meant to be the whole thing. Mm-mm. It's meant to be the beginning of the thing. 5 minutes is not going to get you anything. 5 minutes is going to be the perceptible gain in 5 minutes. Waking up earlier, 5 minutes earlier, is going to be imperceptible. So small that you cannot see the significance of it. But if you're patient and you do it daily anyway, even though you're like, I don't understand this, but I understand and I have faith in the person who's telling me this. That's why coaching and feedback is important. I'm going to do it anyway, because what do you have to lose, right? You're already drowning in whatever it is that you say that you want, right? Or you're not doing what you say that you want to do. Okay, well then let's do something different, right? And for a lot of people, inconvenience is like they don't have enough patience to be inconvenient. They don't have enough patience to wait on something, to let something compound until they can actually see the dividends, right? To save a penny and let a penny compound over time type of mentality. And so really, to be honest with you, the people who win are the people who just wait the longest and mess up the least, right? Because they're patient. They watch things. They go, oh yeah, that's something I don't want to do. Step this way, right? That's something I want to do. One step forward. That's something I want to do, right? Survival is just being the less idiotic. It's not about being the most smart. It's about being the less idiotic, because there's a lot of smart people out there who do really dumb things.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So even in the terms of this podcast, right, I'll give people a great example. We could have told you this, what we've told you, in easily 15 less minutes, right? It's convenient for us right now to keep talking, and we like talking to each other, but we could do it better. So I'm telling you that because we could do it. We are sitting here talking about the subject and can still actively do it better.
That's a really good point. And I can't wait till we do. This is us getting reps in. And for those of you listening and watching, you have really a really cool seat to watch us live it out. We talk about this all the time. It was something we talked about this weekend that I messaged you something of how do we talk about what we talk about more simply? And you're like, Stacy, you're already in my head. You're already in my head. How do we make it more simple? We also know that for those of you listening and watching, you like to watch us talk to each other. So there's this duality of we like talking to each other. And to make it short, we also know you want more of us, but are we doing our listeners a service by making it this long? Like, we'll get to talk to each other as much as we want. So I can't wait for us to hone in that skill set as we get more time to do it. And proximity will give us more clarity and simplicity to watch really what changes. Like in the same, I'm really looking forward to the same zip code to get better at what we do together.
So, to put a little bow on this, feelings are indicators, not dictators. We look forward to hearing back from people who listen to this episode and go, wow, this is something that I really need to practice. And then we're probably going to ask you the next question is, okay, well, what are you doing to practice? Mm-hmm. Because we do enjoy the coaching aspect, not just talking about what we're thinking about. And so if you want to get in touch with us, our Instagram handles are in the bio or in the description of the show, as always. There's a landing page there as well if you want to, get involved with us as coaches and things like that. We also have a free group on a platform called School where we're working to actively make that better with things to think about, exclusive things for people that are in that group and so on and so forth. And so we'd appreciate it if you like what you hear and you've listened along this far, that maybe you come and engage with us in a different way. So till next time, we'll see you.